When we think of financial power today, we picture tech billionaires, Wall Street towers, and the endless hum of global commerce. But what if I told you the most ruthless and effective financial playbook ever written wasn't cooked up in some London hedge fund, but was forged on the bloody battlefields of 19th century Europe? History paints Napoleon Bonaparte as a military genius, an emperor, a conqueror. But the real secret to his empire wasn't just cannons and cavalry. It was a hidden art of financial warfare, a secret he arguably took to his grave. A secret about using money not just to buy things, but to control everything. So, we're going to break down the three core principles of Napoleon's financial doctrine. From manipulating the loyalty of entire armies, to making war pay for itself, and finally, his ultimate weapon against the global elite. And you'll see how these centuries-old secrets are still being used to build and break immense power today. But before we march into Napoleon's first campaign, if you're into the hidden histories of power and finance, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We unpack this kind of stuff every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. In 1796, a young, unproven General Napoleon Bonaparte gets command of the French army of Italy. This wasn't a promotion, it was a poisoned chalice. The army was a complete wreck, beaten down, starving, and practically an open mutiny. The government back in Paris nearly broke from all the revolutionary chaos, was paying its soldiers in a worthless paper currency called assignats. This paper was depreciating so fast, a soldier's pay could become worthless before he even had a chance to spend it. This is where Napoleon pulls off his first financial masterstroke. The whole Italian campaign was launched partly for money. The government desperately needed cash, and the wealthy states of Italy looked like a piggy bank waiting to be smashed. As Napoleon's armies started winning, he seized that wealth. But instead of sending it all back to his political masters in Paris, he did something revolutionary. He paid his soldiers, not in flimsy paper, but in tangible wealth seized from the campaign. Imagine the psychological shock. In a world of financial chaos where your wages were just a government's broken promise, Napoleon delivered real assets directly into the hands of his men. This single act was more powerful than any speech. It wasn't just payment, it was a statement. It said that loyalty to him, Napoleon, was worth more than loyalty to the state. He wasn't just their general, he was their provider. This was the first principle of his financial doctrine. Money is the ultimate tool of loyalty. By paying his men with reliable assets, Napoleon secured the absolute devotion of his army, turning a bunch of disgruntled mutineers into the most formidable fighting force in Europe. He understood a timeless truth. Power doesn't just come from the barrel of a gun, it comes from the hand that reliably fills the soldier's purse. He forged a direct, personal, and financial bond with his men that the state could never hope to match. With a loyal army at his back, Napoleon unleashed his second, and maybe his most brutal financial principle: war must pay for itself. For Napoleon, war wasn't just a political tool, it was a business model, and for a while, it was an incredibly profitable one. The Napoleonic war machine ran on a simple, ruthless formula. Conquered territories weren't just defeated, they were systematically stripped of their wealth. This wasn't just chaotic looting, this was a highly organized system. Defeated nations were forced to pay massive indemnities or reparations directly to the French treasury, often covering the entire cost of the campaign against them and then some. But it didn't stop there. Napoleon's administrators would slap heavy taxes on the conquered populations. His armies were billeted in the homes of locals, forcing them to feed and house the very soldiers who had just subjugated them. The saying "war feeds war" became the unofficial motto of the Grande Armée. This strategy of making defeated nations bear the financial burden of his campaigns was key to his ability to wage war constantly. To fix this, and to grab control back from private interests, Napoleon made one of his most lasting moves. In 1800, he established the Banque de France, the Bank of France. This wasn't just another bank, it was a central pillar of his power. It stabilized the currency, managed the state's finances, and gave him a tool to control the economy. To build trust, he personally invested his own money and got his inner circle to do the same. The bank was granted the exclusive right to issue currency in Paris, centralizing monetary power in a way France hadn't seen before. Still, his distrust of debt was a core belief. Unlike other nations, especially Britain, which was financing its wars through massive government debt and a modern bond market, Napoleon resisted. He saw it as a trap, a surrender of sovereignty to creditors. He preferred to fund his empire with the tangible wealth of conquered lands, not with loans from bankers whose only loyalty was to profit. This created a fundamental clash of systems. Across the Channel, the British were pioneering modern finance, using the power of debt and the Bank of England to fund coalition after coalition against him. Napoleon, meanwhile, was running his empire like an ancient conqueror, fueled by plunder and taxes. It was a high-stakes gamble. For as long as he kept winning, his system worked, but it was brittle. Nowhere is Napoleon's cold, pragmatic approach to finance clearer than in his most famous deal. In 1803, he was facing a renewed war with Britain and dealing with the disastrous, expensive slave revolt in the French colony of Haiti. He looked at his vast territory in North America, Louisiana, and saw not an empire, but a liability. The territory was massive, but it was mostly undeveloped and impossible to defend from the British Navy. His dream of a new world empire was collapsing, and the land was more valuable to him as cold, hard cash. So he made a shocking decision. American diplomats, including future President James Monroe, had come to Paris hoping to buy the port of New Orleans for up to $10 million. Instead, Napoleon offered them everything, the entire Louisiana territory, all 828,000 square miles of it. The asking price was a jaw-dropping $15 million. This wasn't generosity, it was a masterstroke of financial pragmatism. With that one deal, Napoleon hit three critical goals. First, he got a massive infusion of cash to fund his upcoming war against Britain. Second, he dumped a colossal asset he knew he couldn't protect. And third, maybe most strategically, he created a powerful future rival to his main enemy, Britain. He was selling an empire to build an empire. The Louisiana Purchase perfectly captures his financial mind. He was completely unsentimental. Assets were only useful if they served his immediate goals. He understood that sometimes the smartest move is to cut your losses and liquidate, turning a weak position into a powerful advantage. He didn't sell land, he sold a problem, and bought himself a war chest. Napoleon's financial system was a marvel of predatory efficiency, but it was built on a knife's edge. That total reliance on constant victory was its ultimate tragic flaw. The beginning of the end was the disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812. The Grande Armée, which had lived off the land and the wealth of conquered Europe for years, froze and starved in the vast, empty Russian winter. There were no rich cities to plunder, no defeated governments to send a bill to. There was only ruin. Napoleon limped back to France with his army and his aura of invincibility completely shattered. With defeat, his financial model collapsed. The river of foreign money stopped flowing. The war feeds war engine ground to a halt and then slammed into reverse. Suddenly, all the costs of war fell squarely on France. Taxes had to be jacked up, hitting the very French citizens he had shielded for so long. The economic stability he'd so carefully built began to crumble. His enemies, funded by the deep, debt-fueled pockets of the British financial system, could afford to lose and raise new armies. Napoleon, who had always scorned debt, was now forced into desperate financial measures, mortgaging future revenues and taking loans just to field one last army. By the time he was defeated at Waterloo in 1815, the financial reality was just as bleak as the military one. The emperor who had once commanded the wealth of a continent was brought down, in part, by a system of finance he fundamentally refused to embrace. His secret of making war pay for itself worked only as long as he never lost. When he did, the bill came due all at once. So what was the money secret Napoleon took to his grave? It wasn't a treasure map, it was a philosophy. A ruthless, pragmatic, and deeply cynical belief that money is the ultimate amoral instrument of power. It's the idea that loyalty can be bought, that war can be run like a business, and that true power means freeing the state from the influence of global finance. And these secrets are anything but buried. Look around the world today. We see nations using economic might as a weapon through sanctions and trade wars, a modern spin on Napoleon's strategies. We see leaders securing loyalty by providing direct financial benefits to their key supporters. And that classic tension between national governments and the borderless world of international finance is more relevant now than ever. Napoleon's story is a timeless lesson on the link between money and power. He mastered the art of using wealth to build an empire, but his system was too rigid to survive defeat. He proved that while you can conquer lands and seize gold, the more resilient, enduring power often lies in the very financial systems he so deeply distrusted. His doctrine is a potent reminder that in the great game of nations, the hand that gives and the hand that takes are very often one and the same.